So Jesus tells this famous story, this parable in Matthew called the parable of the sower. And he's talking about spiritual life and those people who are taught spiritual things or hear spiritual truths, and the different reactions or the different ways that we're affected by them. After he tells this story, he's talking to his direct disciples, and he quotes to them a teaching from a prophet from the Jewish scriptures of Isaiah. Isaiah says, "You will indeed listen, but never understand, and you will indeed look, but never perceive. For this people's hearts has grown dull, and their ears are hard of hearing, and they have shut their eyes, so that they might not look with their eyes, and listen with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them." Again and again we hear these spiritual truths. I always apply these things to myself. I always feel like I always take it personally, like the scriptures were written for me, and when I read them, I see it as a dialogue. I've grown up around spiritual ideals. I've studied them, in college. I've studied them in Bible studies and Gita studies and at the feet of holy men in the mountains of the Himalayas and convents and monasteries. I still find the wrestle also to transform and to be changed and to really understand these truths. And so when Jesus talks about hearing these things again and again and yet not understanding, and Isaiah telling us that yes, we're going to see these things and not perceive, we're going to hear them but not listen, to make that reference to the heart, that the heart is the key for understanding these things, something deep within us. And Jesus goes on in this parable, the parable of the sower, and he talks about what the different reasons are for us not understanding or for us not being able to hear, even though these truths are presented to us continually. Because I think, especially in churches and mosques and temples, we hear this word constantly. We're preached at constantly. Is it anything else that we need to hear? Is there any other piece of information we need to know? There's something blocking our realization and our unity with the divine and with each other. And Jesus talks about this, and he says some seed fell on the path. These are people who just had no understanding and no interest in hearing spiritual things, so they just disregard them completely. There's no way for them to germinate. All right, so that's one type of situation that we can find ourselves in. We're just not interested. We're happy with our lives the way they are. And, the Vedanta says, fine, if you're happy with life as it is, live your life as it is. When the time comes that you are no longer content or happy with your life, then turn to these truths and see if they're helpful to you. The second one, he says, is the seed sown on rocky ground. And he says this is for people who hear these teachings and get really excited about them, are very happy about them. It only endures for a little while. You go home from the lecture, you're not so inspired, you sort of fall back into the same pattern of living. And I think that's really the not hearing for most of us, is falling back into the pattern of our habit, our life, what we're comfortable with, what we know, and not really making any change in response to what we know and to what we hear. And he says that which is thrown among the thorn. He's the one who hears these truths, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth and enjoyment and things choke it out, and nothing comes of it because of our distraction in the world. So the final seed is the one that falls on good soil, and of course that's the one that grows. That's the one that produces fruit 1,000-fold. And fruits being, the fruit of the Spirit, the gracious living, people who are compassionate and giving, the real pillars of this world, the people who really do take care of the poor and the needy and the hungry and the lonely and the sick and the broken. People who really take that charge and live that life. So it's a good indication for us to reflect on our own mind and our own heart. Is it the cares of the world that's keeping us distracted? Are there things that we're not letting go of that are keeping our time busy and our minds full, so that we're not rising to this realization? Is it just not being interested in it? Is it returning to old habits and things that we know, an area of comfort in this life, that is causing that trouble? Think about it. Because how many words do we have to hear? How much lecturing do we have to endure? What is it? that's holding you back from your realization? What is it that's closed your eyes to the reality of bliss and love that is this life?